So imagine this. You're a first-year chef's apprentice at one of the largest and oldest hotels in the big city. It's been a dream of yours to work in the much storied building. Royalty has stayed there. Famous athletes and actors have called it home while visiting and working in town. You're one of several apprentices who made it in and who are willing to do what it takes to make it not only there, but in the industry at large. It's a stepping stone to a much brighter future. Now, as an apprentice, you know you will be given the not so glamorous tasks, aka the shitty jobs. All apprentices have to go through their paces. All of them. We have all had to pay our dues. Now, like most major hotel properties, the hotel is a 24/7 operation, welcoming in weary travelers at any time of the day or night. So, if you just flew in from Singapore and you had a hankering for a burger or clam chowder at 3 a.m., there has to be someone there to prepare it for you. Hence, enter the overnight shift. The overnight shift is one of those necessary but unpleasant, aka, remember, shitty jobs that all first-year apprentices are generally given as part of the rotation. One reason it sucks is because while you're working, your buddies are either partying, sleeping, gaming, or getting laid. I mean, the only thing you're laying down at night, pal, are beds of lettuce for BLTs. 'Tis the life. Sorry. So here you are as that first-year apprentice. You come into work to do your dreaded overnight shift. You're in charge of the kitchen for the duration of the shift because, well, you're the only one in the kitchen. So I guess congratulations, chef. Your job not only consists of doing room service orders, which are few and far between, but they are necessary, they're important, but also tending to the stocks that are always simmering and bubbling away. You're there to check the soups and sauces as they cool down from the PM production shift. You're also in charge of cleaning out the fridges, prepping, and most importantly, getting hundreds, I mean literally hundreds of pounds of bacon and sausages cooked and put into warmers, ready for the breakfast cooks when they stroll in at 5 a.m. Now, while you're up to your nipples in fryer grease, fighting sleep, and dealing with the nasty roaches that infest that hotel, which, by the way, is a completely different story altogether, there's one last thing you need to get done. And that is to collect and deal with the leftover food from the VIP and meeting room floors. These floors, the people that stay there, are often served hors d'oeuvres, cheese plates, charcuterie boards, etc. You get the idea. And therefore, there's often like a small kitchen area that stores the fruit platters and sandwiches and profiteroles, wine, etc., etc. Your job is to gather the old plates and containers, replace them with fresh goods, and refresh any other foodstuffs there. So, one night at about 3 a.m., you, the apprentice, head up to the VIP floors to collect the goods. You're alone, as usual, and you step off the staff elevator that leads directly to the kitchenette. You look around and decide, like where you're going to start gathering stuff. The kitchenette lights are off, but the overhead lights by the elevator faintly illuminate the whole back of the house space. It's not dark per se, but you can't see much, if that makes sense. As you start to move towards the fridges, pushing your cart, your eyes catch something in the darker areas. Your vision adjusts a little bit. You squint to get into, a little bit more detail. What you see, no more than 15 feet away from you, is someone that looks like a server. Now, the reality is that servers on the VIP floors don't generally work at this time. But you never know. You're a first-year apprentice. What do you know? You know nothing. So you decide to take a closer look just in case. The server's wearing a uniform you've never seen before. It looks old-fashioned, very old-timey, something like from a Tom and Jerry cartoon. The server's moving about one area to the other with ease and flow, almost with too much ease and flow. The problem? You can only see the top portion of him. He has no bottom half. The call's coming from inside the house. There's no legs, no hips. The hips don't lie. He's all torso and all business. And he's partially translucent. Yay! He doesn't acknowledge you as he's focused on whatever it is that he's doing. You can't quite tell what that is though, but regardless, he's engaged with it. You're frozen. The color drains out of your face. You look like Jack Torrance in the final scene of The Shining. You don't say anything for fear of catching the floating torso's gaze or attention. And you stand there for what seems like eternity, but really, it's only been a few seconds. Your hands white-knuckled around the cart handle. You decide, right then and there, that the leftover food will definitely not be picked up right now, because screw that. You gather all of your strength that you can muster into your legs and shuffle back to the elevator. The only sound you hear is the squeaking of the cartwheels and your heartbeat, which is sounding like a jackhammer in your ears. And as you slip into the elevator car, you shakily press the button to go back down. And you breathe a huge sigh of relief as the elevator's door closes and glides down to the safety of the base kitchen. Ooh, scary. Who doesn't love a little ghost story? Am I right? Am I right? Well, probably not that poor apprentice, especially when you're the one starring in the story. Now, on that same morning where our brave protagonist was dealing with the bottomless apparitions, I just happened to be there early. And I was checking in on the guy to just see how his shift was. He was a cool dude, and I really liked talking to him. So I was just making conversation, like, hey, what's up, pal? But I can confirm he did look like he had just seen a ghost. Although little did I know what he had experienced. My man was pale as a venti flat white, and his eyes were unfocused and vacant, kind of like how I look when my youngest forces me to watch Adam Sandler films with him. I asked the apprentice what was wrong, and understandably, he didn't want to talk about it at the moment. He mumbled as he ambled away towards the awaiting bacon trays. It was later the next day that he opened up about it and shared his story with me, and my first reaction was, whoa. I believed him. I had no reason not to believe him. You could see it in how shaken he was, and also, the building was old, and I had heard rumors myself about people seeing things that they couldn't really explain. He had zero reason to make something like that up, especially if it was something that he didn't even want to talk about. Like, why go through the effort of creating a fantastical or phantasmical story only not to share it? It makes no sense. Listen, our man saw some real Scooby-Doo shit in a creepy building, if that were me, I'd be telling everyone I ran into about it. And eventually, he did start to share it with others. Now, of course, as word did get around, some folks didn't buy his story, which I can understand. But this cat here, I was in there like Jujutsu Kaisen cosplayers at Comic-Con. So, what is the takeaway from this spooky encounter? For me, it's one word: energy. What I'll talk about today is a bit about energy from a more spiritual perspective and what that means for you in the flesh and bone of your 3D existence. Now, we're not going to step heavily into the trenches of the woo, but you will leave with a faint whiff of the woo about you when we're done. There's a lot of points of view out there when it comes to things that go bump in the night. And I may challenge a few of those, especially when it comes to the language of demons and ghosts and all that kind of stuff. And it's not to convince anyone of my point of view per se, but maybe just to educate and expand some horizons, just to kind of create a dialogue around this. I'm also going to share my experiences with the weird and wonderful out there. I even have some video evidence that I'm going to share with you. And it's not what you expect. It's not like a clip of the chupacabra chewing through a hen house like a stoner on a bucket of KFC, but it is still pretty groovy. And by the way, speaking of buckets, specifically of kicking them, I need you to stick around to the end because in preparing for this podcast, I found out the 4 most common paranormal activities experienced at the hotel I was talking about, including who it was that the apprentice saw and how they passed on. So, don't disappear yet. If you ever watch ghost hunting shows, you'll notice 2 things. 1, most of them are fake. Sorry, not sorry. We can discuss that at length another time. 2, they love to carry with them EMF meters. EMF, or electromagnetic field meters, were originally designed to diagnose problems with electrical wiring and power lines and to get readings on working appliances. Ghost hunters feel that when ghostly energy is nearby, it will emit electromagnetic energy that those EMF meters will pick up on. Many feel that those EMF meters are unreliable, though, as sometimes they can be triggered, like by an Apple Watch, or faulty wiring, or microwave towers, iron, recording equipment, or cell phones. So, buyer beware, or viewer beware. There's no clear scientific connection between electromagnetic fields and ghosts per se. But one thing is clear. When it comes to things paranormal or spirit-based, or basically everything around us, there is energy. Personally, I believe in what is called source energy. You can call it what you want: God, Christ, or divine consciousness, universal mind, prana, the absolute, whatever. But it's all that is. It is nothing and yet everything. It is a field of energy that runs through everything, like a life force. Source is a continuous, infinite ocean of energy that includes everything that exists, that ever is, and ever was. This actually lines up with the first law of thermodynamics, #science, which states that the energy of the universe remains the same. Though it may be exchanged between system and the surroundings, energy can't be created or destroyed. In other words, all the energy that ever was or ever will be is already here. So in that regard, all things, including us folks living and the folks not living on this plane, all come from and return to the same source of energy. Everything is interconnected. The law of perpetual transmutation tells us that energy only changes states and never disappears. It can help us understand that when we die, the life force that once animated us and made us believe that things like, the mullet and the Macarena were good ideas, that life force will and must return to source energy. But not all energy is detectable. Just like there are spectrums of color and sound that aren't available to us but are to other creatures. We as humans have a limited range of sensory input. Now, just because we can't see it or hear it or feel it, it doesn't mean it ain't there. Now, there are times we do sense other things that don't always make sense. And of course, people who are psychic or practicing mediums, evidential mediums, or who are open to such things will pick up on these more regularly and with more accuracy. Even without being a spiritual practitioner, I'm sure that if you're watching or listening, you've had at least one experience of sensing, hearing, or feeling something that you can't quite explain. And it's pretty trippy when it happens, right? Of course, some of us will try to explain it away, and others will just accept the mystery as is. In my opinion, what the apprentice saw was probably something closer to the lines of echo consciousness or maybe residual energy. Not necessarily spirit energy, but it did come from spirit at some point. Echo consciousness is an energetic imprint of the conscious energy that was once there. It's energy that's sort of caught in a loop, but not quite entirely sentient. You hear maybe people talking about a shadow figure they see in the corner bedroom in the same area over and over again. That's most likely echo consciousness. It's something that is echoing or repeating without it having a direct source of it right then and there. A good way to explain this, I know we're getting all heady and trippy already. Okay, it's sort of like when you smell cigarette smoke in a car from the previous owner. The person isn't there smoking in front of you per se, but the remnants of their energy, persona, activities linger. So you can smell it every time you enter the vehicle. Echo consciousness is sort of like a hologram stuck on repeat, if you will. Some people describe it as an old recording. Now, sometimes that energy can feel uplifting and light, and other times it can feel heavy or negatively charged. Sometimes it's neither. Again, it's an energetic imprint. And that energetic imprint is what some people call a ghost. But it's not sentient. You can't quite communicate with it as you potentially can spirit energy. Now, in saying all of that, I'm not a fan of the term ghost per se. I would rather use the term energetic imprint or just energy instead. It's more neutral and it doesn't involve fear based ideas such as hauntings and demons and such. Like, even the term demon is something that I don't use, but obviously others do. Demons and devil and attachments and all those come more from certain religious storytellings and or cultural references found in movies and books. I'm sure I'll get pushback on that one, but again, my opinion, my podcast, what are you going to do? Now, while there are energies that are denser and have like a different or lower vibration, I don't believe that there's like this thing with horns out there trying to take over your body or that sits on your shoulder and makes you choose the Black Forest chocolate cake over the fruit salad at the all you can eat. In the end, it's our interpretation of the energy that gets in the way. Ego, assumption, comforting stories from certain texts, fear mongering. All of this adds fuel to the fire and to those fears. And I'm going to share with you how this showed up for me as well, because I got caught up in those things myself. Ghost hunting shows will use the spooky language of ghosts and exorcism and demons and skinwalkers, etc., to get people to, click on their YouTube videos. They reinforce the idea of things that are out there, which are trying to get you or attack you, of things that want to harm or frighten you. And it's just simply not true. I used to think it was true, but I don't see things like that anymore. And by the way, I'm not a ghost hunting video debunker. Go watch Beardo or World of Mr. Grey for that. We're just talking about spirit here. And spirit is not about harming. Spirit doesn't see things the way we do. It's beyond our human brains how spirit is. We can only interpret spirit through our own limited capabilities. Our brains want to make sense of what doesn't make sense. And so we create stories around it. It's natural to do so, but it can be misleading and even damaging. When I think of The Apprentice and what he saw, it was definitely energetic in nature, but it probably wasn't something he could communicate with, even if he wanted to, which I don't think was an idea he was even remotely entertaining. Understanding all of this doesn't make seeing a bottomless, transparent dude floating around any less startling or frightening, especially if you're not used to seeing that kind of stuff. I mean, I think if that were me now, even knowing what I know, with the things that I've experienced up until now, I still might have hightailed it out of there. I'd be like, y'all ain't paying me enough to mess with someone who checked out of life but didn't have the wherewithal to check out of the building. You feeling me? You know what I'm saying? So, Paul, you may be asking, that's all fine and dandy about the things that can't communicate. Cool, cool, cool. But what about the things that are sentient in some way? Can they communicate with us? My answer is, oh yeah, hell yeah. And I'm going to share my experiences with this alongside some video evidence. Now, go get a bevy, meet me at the pass, and let's talk more. About a year or two ago, I hit my second big spiritual awakening. The first was when I got sober about a dozen years ago. But this awakening was much broader and deeper and fraught with pitfalls, which I'll talk about shortly. This awakening involved truly opening up to extensive spiritual practices. And for a while, I was heavily, and I mean heavily, into things like divination and shamanic practices and intuitive work, inner healing, chakra work, crystals, pendulums, and even a touch of mediumship. And there was more. There was more stuff as well. I still do shamanic work for myself to this day, but for the most part, I've let go a lot of the spiritual bling, so to speak, and have been content to have a more profound and quieter version of spirituality for myself. Now, just like a light that goes on in the dark, when someone spiritually awakens, they can see more, but they can also attract attention in some ways, which for me meant that I was perceiving and picking up on energy that I was asleep to before. All of a sudden, I was able to see when and feel when I was connected to spirit through bodily sensations and other clues. I was hearing things, I was seeing things, I was feeling things that I couldn't explain. Yet at the same time, I understood in my bones to be true. There would be times I would feel hands on my back and shoulders and stomach and other parts of me. I would be in a room and then suddenly feel like someone just walked in, even knowing if it was generally a masculine or more feminine energy. I would hear things like choral music or my name being called or people in conversations or other clear sounds in music when there was no obvious clear source of that sound nearby. I would hear whispers in my mind's ear. My ears, would ring at certain times with varying pitches depending on what was going on. I would see shadows. I would see things fluttering around that weren't there. Lights flickering with no electrical issues. Early on in my awakening, oh, this is cool. Okay, in the middle of the night, I once heard a voice as clear as day say to me, "Hey, can you feel this?" And then suddenly our dachshund used to sleep with us and he barely moved at night, suddenly put his cold, wet nose against my leg, jolting me up even more. I would then hear a young girl's voice giggling. And then again, once in the middle of the night, I had it's kind of embarrassing. Something punched me in the junk. Sorry, maybe TMI. But it kind of hurt, but didn't. It was just awkward and unexpected. It felt like it was a young guy who did it, like just joshing around like young men would do in a locker room, like whipping wet towels and stuff on each other. And what's funny is I started to tell a psychic friend about this story. As soon as I started sharing, she goes, that was a young man who did this, right? Like she knew even before I got like even a few sentences in to the story. So she had picked up on that energy as well. I've had plenty of doors, drawers, cabinets open up in my basement. My basement has always been a hub of activity. I once had a medium tell me that my basement was like a subway train station. So many energies coming and going. And most of my experiences have been down here. I'm in this basement now recording this. And I don't know, maybe because I spend most of my time in here, my energy is here, like I'm working, eating, chilling, and doing my spiritual practices. Like so I've really opened myself up down here. But I've had other things happen in other areas. I would be down here, go upstairs, get a drink, and come back down and find the laundry door wide open when only 20 seconds ago it was firmly closed, like firmly closed. And I always keep it closed because the noise from the furnace disturbs me. The craziest ones, ooh, here they are. I was having a nap in the basement, a quick one, and I was awoken by a bell ringing, like cling, cling. Now I checked my phone to see if it was my alarm. It wasn't. I checked my laptop. Maybe I had a YouTube video on there. Nope, nothing. But of course, I didn't think about checking the bike that was like 8 feet from me. I was temporarily storing it for a bit. So I was like, it couldn't be, could it? So I gingerly walked towards it and then rang the bell. It was cling, cling. It was the same exact sound. I mean, what could have made it ring? I mean, it was one of those manual bells. You had to kind of push kind of hard to get it to make that noise. So I went upstairs to see if maybe my youngest son was in the kitchen because the stairs lead to the kitchen. Sometimes he used to fix his bike there, but no, he wasn't there. The bike wasn't there. There was nothing. So I walked to the living room and I saw my wife on the couch. And I asked her, I said, "Did you hear a bike bell ring?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, well, how many times did you hear it?" And she said, "Twice." She had heard it. It wasn't my imagination. It goes to show that energy, spirit energy, is able to manipulate things in the physical as needed. It's known that manipulating electronics is one popular way spirit communicates with us. It's pretty wild. And now to the one where I have video evidence. Now, I'm not going to play the whole thing. You can find it on my TikTok account, which I'll put a link in the show notes. But I'll share the most important part here. Okay, I have to share this, and this is just weird, and not. Okay, as you know, if you're watching YouTube and for some reason it pauses, you get this message, right? It says video pause, continue watching. It says yes, and you click it and you keep just watching and listening, right? So we know that. So I just did full moon ritual. So that's basically just releasing our ceremony, just releasing the things you want to let go of. And so I wrote a list, said it out loud, burned it. And the thing I said after that was, I released these, so be it. Okay, so remember that. So remember, the last words I said were, so be it. So I come down to my office. I'm going to do my card spread. The music I was listening to, right, video pause, continue. Where it normally says yes. And remember, my last words were, so be it. And it is. I've never seen that in my life. This is not, I didn't type that. This is like, I'm even afraid to click it. And I will. But so yeah, that's pretty freaky. Eh? Like I said, spirit can manipulate electronics easily. Now, as an aside, what was kind of funny is I had some people accuse me on TikTok of faking the video for clout and for all that. But it did happen. Just like with the young cook, I had no reason to make it up. I couldn't even try if I wanted to. The funny thing is I'm Canadian and we don't get funds from TikTok. So there was nothing there for me to try to create. Anyway, now I've had more things happen around me and near me. And I have to admit, sometimes it was downright frightening for me, at least very startling. But it was of my own making. And this is one of the pitfalls I talked about earlier. Like when I was diving into all this spiritual work, I was also bringing on, I was binging on all those fear-driven ghost hunting shows I mentioned before. I was reading up on darker, denser energies. I was focused on what I didn't want as opposed to what I did want. I started to live in fear. My body vibrated in that denser energy. So guess what? I started to attract this stuff. Those shadows I would see, that was because of fear. I brought in what I feared. Those shadows themselves weren't bad or evil. I just perceived them as such. They just were. But I saw shadows as scary and dark and gnarly. And I used to sleep with the lights on when I was alone. I know it sounds silly, but I was afraid that something would find me. But I was truly frightened in those early days. I had to learn to shift my thinking, shift my beliefs, and focus on what I wanted and not what I didn't want. And this is something that we all do in many ways in all areas of our lives. And that's the big point I want to make in all of this. We attract what we feel, think, and believe. If there's anything you get from this episode, it's that. If I believe demons in demons and ghosts, I will find evidence of that. It's like confirmation bias, right? If I believe that something is after me, then I will attract situations that put me in a place where I feel like I'm under attack. Remember I said everything is interconnected. Energy just is. It flows in and through us. It has different frequencies and vibrations. Law of attraction states that like energy seeks like energy. So again, if you're living in a fear state or a negative state, you're going to attract people and situations that will reflect and amplify that. If you walk around thinking you're a victim, like, oh, woe is me, everyone's always out to get me, then the universe is going to match that energy and give you more of what you think about. It's going to say, oh, this person can't stop thinking about vibing on this negativity, so they must love that stuff. So they're going to give you more. Hence, you're going to find yourself in positions where you are going to be victimized, or at least feel like that. That's going to be your perception. On the other hand, if you see things as happening for you rather than to you, or you see the opportunities and lessons in all situations, no matter how dire, or that you're worthy of happiness and wealth, then again, the universe will match that energy and bring you more opportunities, more chances for growth, and people in situations that can support you. Remember, energy is neutral. It's how you use it and how you perceive it that's where the labels get slapped on. Right? Some people see a shadow and think evil or demon because of the belief systems and perceptions. Others see them and just see them as energy. They're neutral. I tend to see things as signs from my guides or messages that I'm meant to see. Sometimes I think spirit is sometimes out just to have fun with me. But again, that's my perception. I prefer to see and like to see things as lighter, more playful, connected, and grounded, and coming from love rather than coming from fear or hatred. It all comes down to your perception, homie. As Anais Nin once said, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. When you make the decision to shift how you see the world, how you see yourself in the world, and most importantly, how you see yourself, then you'll bring in more of what you desire and want and repel more of what doesn't line up with who you are and what your goals are. So, change your beliefs and you'll change how you see the world. Either it's spooky and scary or abundant and joyful. It's your choice. Okay, I did promise you something earlier on that I would share who was it that the apprentice may have seen that night. So, who was it that the young man encountered in his overnight duties? Well, according to sources, a former banquet porter was found hanging in the stairwell of the 19th floor, which is one floor where meeting rooms are found. Once in a while, staff report seeing the porter's upper body floating around on that 19th floor. They also report feeling like they're being watched or hearing loud footsteps in the area of the stairwell. The same building has had other unexplained phenomena, like the one floor that has the sound of children laughing and running down the hallways when there isn't anyone there, or the floor where a man in a purple suit is seen just meandering about. Or the floor below one of the shut down ballrooms where guests report hearing music and people talking as if the ballroom was still open and active. Personally, I think what is scarier than all of that are those big roaches I talked about earlier, those beachos. Ugh. I do have to share stories about that at some time, but they're horrifying, more horrifying than all of this. Anyway, let me know what your biggest takeaway was in the comments below. My hope is that you found this entertaining or useful in some way. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications for when the next episode drops. All right, kitchen's closed. Now scram.